Welcome to the She's Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. I know this is a super busy time of year, so I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me today. The She's Bold podcast is where I feature one-on-one in-person conversations with some very inspirational women. These are best-selling authors, travelers, adventurers, photographers, musicians, athletes, doctors, spiritual practitioners, and so much more. While they have a wide range of backgrounds and interests, they all have inspirational stories to share. And in every episode, you're going to take away some gem, some pearl of wisdom that will make you look at your own life in a new way. Hopefully, today's conversation will be as inspiring as always for you. Today is actually a bit different. Today, I'm the guest, and Chris Fagan, whom you might recall from episode 88, asks me the questions. And this is all about Epic5, my run across Hawaii, basically. 5 ultra marathons, so it's 50K in 5 days on 5 Hawaiian islands. As a reminder, Chris and her husband walked 560 miles over 48 days to the South Pole, and they were pulling sleds with all of their gear that weighed about 200 pounds. So yeah, she's pretty inspirational. If you're new to the show, you haven't heard that episode, go back to number 88 and listen to that. You'll love it. Now, Chris actually suggested that we sit down and talk through my recent experience running Epic5 in Hawaii. As an experienced ultra runner herself, she had some great questions because she knew what to ask and some really great insight because of her past experience. So we were able to talk through my preparation for running 5 50Ks in 5 days on 5 islands, as well as the actual experience itself, and then also my recovery. Now, you'll also hear a question that was asked by Dana. Dana is one of my Patreon supporters. Thanks, Dana. And getting to ask questions of guests is just one benefit you'll get as a supporter of the show. For just $5 a month, you'll also be added to a private Facebook group and have access to bonus content that is usually in the form of a question that I ask the guest after we finished recording the main part of the show. So it's a nice little bonus there. So just $5 a month. Hopefully you're feeling generous. I would love to have your support and have you part of our She's Bold community. Check out shesboldpodcast.com/Patreon for details. Before I get to my conversation with Chris, I do want to give a huge shout out to the Epic5 race directors, Rebecca Morgan and Chris Brennan, and our photographer, Colin Cross. These folks did an amazing job at supporting our small group of runners. I can't thank them enough for making this event happen, given our small but mighty numbers. And thanks to Peter Jert for running Epic5 for the second year in a row. As I told him, given that he knew what he was getting himself into, I was even more impressed that he actually showed up. And he was a lot of fun. The folks at Epic5 are best known for their triathlon races, where participants complete 5 triathlons in 5 days on 5 Hawaiian islands. Now, next year they are doing 10 triathlons in 10 days. It's Epic Deca. It's their 10-year anniversary. So they're doing 10 triathlons in 10 days. I cannot wrap my head around that. So throughout my runs, my 50Ks, I knew that it would be nothing compared to what participants in that event would be taking on. So it almost made what I was doing seem pretty easy. If you're a runner and want to challenge yourself, I do highly recommend the Epic5 run. It was truly just a fantastic experience for me. And while there were just 3 of us running in it this year, it's limited to 12. So it'll always be an intimate group of people that you'll get to know well during the experience. And I guarantee it's a fantastically supported race, and you would just have an amazing time. And you can see more about those events at epic5.com. With that, please enjoy my conversation, or her conversation, Chris Fagan's conversation with me on the She's Bold podcast.
Hey, Beth, when I met you back in March, you told me about this crazy event that you had signed up for.
Did I tell you?
You did. You said, I just signed up for this event and I have no idea how I'm going to do this event. So I want to dive into learning more about this event. So there's this Epic5 event that you mentioned, and it's these 5 islands and 5 races in Hawaii. And my mind was blown when I heard about it, but I don't know much about it. Before we dive into it, tell me a little bit about running for you and how you even got the path to this Epic5.
What's really interesting, thank you for that question, because I think the interesting part about that is that the path is really short, because I really only started running really about like 5 years ago. So I'm going to dial it back a little bit and give a little bit more information, just because I think it's an interesting trajectory, a slow trajectory as it is. But I think it's interesting to know kind of the history behind it. So I think some people looking at me might say, oh, you've always been fit or you've always been an athlete. And that's just not the case. I did a lot of walking. Like John and I walk our neighborhood all the time, and all the neighbors know us because we're walkers. But I never really worked out. I would do this kind of little challenge with myself where I would do 100 push-ups a day or 100 sit-ups a day. But I don't consider that really being super fit. That was just a little challenge for myself. And I met this woman years ago. She was actually on one of my tours. She was on my Seattle culinary tour. And she told me that she had lost 75 pounds doing this thing called P90X. And I was like, what's that? And she said, oh, it's this home fitness program. And for those who don't know, it's very much like a CrossFit, like a home CrossFit program. So there's a little bit of cardio involved and there's some weight training involved in it. But it's very self-motivating because it's 90 days, P90X, right? 90. So I just thought, wow, that's really cool that she did this. And not that I wanted to lose weight, but I just thought I do want to be a little bit more fit. So I'm going to get this program. And I'm the kind of person that when something resonates with me and I make a decision, I just do it. Like I don't give a lot of thought. I'm like, oh, let me research what else there is. I'm just like, oh, okay, I'll do that. So I ordered the program. And like 2 days later, I got it. I think it was July 4th. When would that have been? Like 2015, maybe. 2013, maybe it was. 2013. And I just thought, okay, I'm going to do this. So I started doing that program. And then I just kept going. I did it for over a year. So it's a 90-day program, but I did it over a year. Started doing P90X. And then after that, I did a trek in Bhutan called the Snowman Trek. It's 25 days, 220 miles, up to 18,000 feet. And I'd been going to Bhutan for years and years, and I'd heard about this like legendary trek, the Snowman Trek, and I thought I could never do that. Like I am not a trekker, I'm not a hiker. I could never do that. And then I started to think, and it was probably right around the time I started doing P90X, I thought, I always said I couldn't do that Snowman Trek. I think I'm going to do that Snowman Trek. I'm going to offer it as a tour. So I did. And it's kind of that thing. It's like, okay, I made the decision and I just went for it, just decided to do it. So I did that, did the trek. And during the trek, I thought, I always said I couldn't do this. What else have I said that I couldn't do? I've always said that I wasn't a runner. Why don't I flip that on its head and figure out how to be a runner? And I've always said I could never do a marathon. So I'm going to run a marathon. And so I made that decision on that. So got home and started training for a marathon. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then ran my first marathon at 50. It was a Honolulu marathon. And before I even ran that marathon, I had also signed up for the Tokyo Marathon. And that's a story in and of itself. But I had signed up for the Tokyo Marathon, which was like 2 months later. And as I was doing the Honolulu Marathon, I thought it was the stupidest thing ever. I'm walking, mile 18, 19, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm never doing another marathon again. This is the stupidest thing. Why would anybody do this? This is terrible. And I was like, oh shit, like I'm already signed up for another marathon and we're going to Japan so that I can go do the marathon. So anyway, did the Tokyo Marathon and then just started to enjoy it, started to get hooked on it, and just realized that there were things that I could do that I didn't think were possible. And as you know, also as a runner, that it kind of gets to you. And then you start to think, okay, what else can I do? I did this, now what else can I do? So I just progressively started getting more involved in running. I actually ran 5 marathons. So I did Honolulu 2 weeks after my 50th birthday. I ran 5 marathons that year. 2 of them were back to back. One was an ultra 50K. And then the next day I did the Seattle Marathon. And then the next year I did a Quadzilla, which is 4 marathons in 4 days. And somewhere in there I had qualified for Boston as well, which is a feat, I guess, a big deal. I'm not a super fast runner, but I did qualify. I've qualified twice now for Boston. Yeah, so that's kind of the running history. That's my running history.
So your first year of running in races, you did 5 marathons.
Yeah, I did. So I did Honolulu, Tokyo, and then I did a 4th of July marathon on Sauvie Island, which is just outside of Portland. And I was looking for a 50-miler. I wanted to do, I've always considered myself a road runner as opposed to a trail runner. And I wanted to do a 50-miler, but I found that I couldn't find any 50-mile road races. And at the time, I didn't understand why. Now I understand why, and I'm sure that'll come up later as we talk. So I thought, well, the closest thing to that would be to do 2 back-to-back marathons. And I found these 2 marathons in Seattle that I could do. One is called The Ghost, which is around Seward Park, and then the Seattle Marathon. It's right after Thanksgiving. And when I was doing the Ghost Marathon, which is on the Saturday, I met these people who were doing 4 marathons in a row. And I thought they were the stupidest people in the world, just so crazy. What are you doing 4 marathons in a row? I'm doing 2, and everybody thought I was crazy. And then I find that there's this thing called the Quadzilla, which is pretty common, what I've come to learn. They were doing the 4. And then, don't you know, a year later, I did the Quadzilla.
Right.
So
right. It's that stepping stone.
It is a stepping stone, right.
So this was your foundation. And so how did this Epic5 fit into this equation? When did this come into your consciousness as something that might be attainable for you?
Yeah, talk about stepping stones. Epic5 is actually a stepping stone to something else. So what happened was having brunch with some friends, and one of my friends is the videographer for a race series called The 4 Deserts. The website is racingtheplanet.com, and it has all the information there. And I'd actually seen this documentary a long time ago, years ago, before I was even running. I saw this documentary called Desert Runners. It's about these few runners who were attempting to run 4 stage races in 1 year, called the 4 Deserts. So it's now they've changed it a little bit, but now it's the Namib in Namibia, it's the Gobi in Mongolia, it's the Atacama in Chile, and it's Antarctica. And again, here's a little theme. I thought they were the craziest people on the planet. Something I would never ever do.
Can you explain what a stage race is?
Yeah, sure. So good point. Each of these races is 7 days long. In some stage races, some are self-supported and some are supported, meaning self-supported, you've got everything, you have to carry everything yourself. And if it's a supported race, then you might run for the day, and then at the end of the day, they're going to feed you a meal, and you've got a place to stay, and your stuff is there. In the 4 Deserts races, you have to carry everything on your back. So you've got to pack, and it's probably 25 pounds because it's got at least 14,000 calories of food. It's got medical supplies, emergency kits. It's got your clothes. It's got a sleeping bag, sleeping pad, your phone, a camera if you want it, anything else along those lines. You're carrying it all yourself, and your water, of course. So in the case of the 4 Deserts, they're not all in a row. The Namib is in April. The Gobi is in June, the Atacama is in September, and Antarctica is in November. So they're spread out. Mm. And different stage races are run differently. So there's the Marathon des Sables, which is in the Sahara. I think it's Morocco. It's in the Moroccan Sahara, and that's also a stage race. And I actually don't know. I don't think that that's a self-supported race. I think that people get support along the way. But in the case of the Four Deserts, I cannot accept help from anyone. So John's volunteering on those, but he can't slip me a piece of candy. Like, he cannot do anything or I'll be disqualified.
I do know the Marathon des Sables, at least in the past, it's the same.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, because my husband Marty did that.
He did?
Back when I was pregnant.
Oh, my gosh.
That was now 18 years ago.
Yeah.
But,
oh, my gosh.
So it may have changed. But all they got was water at the end of the day to resupply, and that's it.
Oh, at the end of the day?
Yeah, well, they would get sort of their ration.
Yeah.
Just daily ration.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, they have, I know in the Four Deserts, they've got aid stations every 6 miles so that you can replenish your water. So
yeah, they didn't. They just had a certain quantity, and that was it. And that really stressed a lot of people's bodies.
Oh, God, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I think they're... I think probably for liability reasons, because, I mean, honestly, somebody died on the event. I know it was probably 10 years ago because it's in the documentary. Yeah, so I think that they are super cautious.
That's great
about that.
Because at that time, you only got a certain quantity, and certain people's bodies needed so much more, and there were people dropping,
right?
Having to shoot their flare guns because they were.
Oh, they have flare guns.
They had at that time, and Marty came upon somebody during the race who was so out of it, and so that he had to take the guy's flare gun and shoot it so that person could be saved.
Oh,
because
my goodness.
He was wandering around so dehydrated.
Oh, that's crazy.
Going the wrong direction.
Yeah. Whew, that's crazy. Mm-hmm. No, I think this is a little bit more flexible. This is easier.
Great.
This is easier.
Well, I mean, we don't want to
minimize that.
Yeah.
The risk. So anyway, this friend of ours is a videographer for a lot of these events for the Four Deserts, and we're having brunch, and he said, so it's he was describing it to some other people there, and he said, it's a 7-day stage race where you're basically running maybe like a marathon a day or something. And I was like, what? I just ran 4 marathons in 4 days. Of course I can run just a little bit more than that in a couple of extra days. And so the look on my face, I'm like, what? Of course I could do that. And John was like, did you guys see that? That was a decision being made. Like, he knows me well enough that click. I just made the decision, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm all over that. I can definitely do that. Knowing that I had done the Quadzilla, 4 marathons in 4 days, I could do just a little extra and have another day in there, whatever, to do it. So there is a point to this. I made the decision that I was going to do it 2020. I have to schedule, because I run a tour company, I have to schedule way out. And I thought, okay, I'll do 2020. And it turns out they only do Antarctica every other year, and 2020 is the year that they're doing that. So it worked out perfect. So John said, you really should have something in 2019 to kind of lead up to it. And so I started searching around, and I found this Epic5. And I thought, oh my gosh, because I thought, well, Hawaii would be a total bonus if there was something in Hawaii. And I came across these races, which are Epic5. And so Epic5 is 5 ultras. So anything over a marathon, 26.2 miles, is considered an ultra. And this is 5 ultras, 50K, in 5 days on 5 Hawaiian islands. And so what it means is that you're running in the morning, you are getting on a plane, going to the next island, overnighting, running the next morning, getting on a plane, going to the next island, overnighting, running the next morning. You're doing that 5 times. Mm-hmm. And that's what
is.
Epic5
So
and
Epic5 is a stepping stone.
Yes.
Okay.
That was my training race.
Yes. Well, I wanted to learn a little bit more about training, so that's a great segue.
Yeah.
So we've gone from all these marathons that you were doing, and then you jumped into the Epic5. What specifically did you do to prepare yourself for Epic5 that was different or unique specifically for that race?
Volume of running. I worked with a coach who has actually also coached people on the Four Deserts and Epic5. And so he's an ultra endurance coach, and I contacted him, and he's very expensive because he's working with elite athletes. And I said, I think you have this program that's a little bit pared down. Can we just work on a smaller basis just to get me through these events? And so that worked out. So it's just a short time period. We did some back and forth, and he gave me a training plan for it. And my volume, it is really difficult for me to get the volume because I have so much travel. So I didn't quite get all the volume that I needed, let's say on like a weekly basis, but I had enough. I was probably at my peak, I probably ran maybe 85 miles a week. But, just like with any marathon training plan, you're working up to a volume and then you're backing off and you're kind of going into a recovery mode, for a couple of, not recovery mode, but a taper for a couple of weeks. And so that's exactly what I did. So as I was increasing my volume, I was astounded, for one, by how much time the running took up. Because it's not as much as people say, and this is what I thought, oh, running, that's great. I can just put on my sneakers and walk out the door and go for a run. To a certain degree, that is true. But especially when you start getting into the volumes, then you have to make sure that you've got enough water to last you for a few hours out, or 4 hours. If you're doing trails like me, like living in the area that I do, I have to drive 30 minutes minimum to get to a good trail. So then there's drive time back and forth. There's making sure that I've got enough nutrition, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I've got other snacks with me. I've got the water with electrolytes in it, so I prep all this stuff at night. And then I have to make sure that little things make a big difference. I have to make sure that my headphones are all charged up and my phone's all charged up and my watch is all charged up. So at first, getting myself out the door, I'm like, where's this? Where's that? And I'm trying to put everything together. And then I realize, okay, when I walk in the door from the run, everything gets plugged in. It's all ready for the next morning. I get all my food ready. I get my peanut butter and jelly sandwich ready. I get some food that I can put in the car so I can either eat along the way, or when I get to the trailhead, I'll have something to eat. So I just got into this rhythm and I realized, okay, so it wasn't as bad. As soon as I kind of got into that rhythm, it really helped. I wasn't freaking out so much, I guess I should say.
What were your, longer runs? As you got to the peak, were they 4 hours, or what was the kind of longer, so that people could have in their mind?
7 hours, yeah. So I did. See,
Does that simulate how long you might be out on one of these?
Yeah. But it was only 28 miles. But it took me a long time, because when you're out on trails, it just takes you longer. That was something new for me. I was like, what? I'm not going to be running my regular, 9-minute mile or 9.5-minute mile. No, you're out there for 12 or 14 minutes because you're jumping over rocks and roots and you're stopping to eat your peanut butter and jelly sandwich,
For sure.
So it just takes you longer. So I went out to Bridle, I think it's Bridle Trails, and there's I think it's like a 3-mile loop or something. So I went out there and I did 7 hours on that. I went clockwise, and then I went counterclockwise, and I went clockwise and counterclockwise. And I was out there until my watch and my headphones ran out of battery. And that was 7 hours, 28 miles. And I thought, okay, time to get a new watch. For one thing, I have to upgrade because I need more time than that on my watch. And but it was a good simulation for me to be out that long. So that was kind of the peak of it.
So during those runs, tell me about how your mind and your body were preparing for the actual show. What feedback were you getting from your mind and body? Positive or negative?
Oh, I think it was all very positive. Like, I was amazed that I was able to go out there and do that and not be bored out of my mind, or just say like, okay, it's time to go home. I think a lot of it has to do with being mentally and physically prepared for it. I mean, that might be a given, but it's more than just having some miles under my belt and then saying, okay, now I'm going to go out for a 7-mile run. It is eating well and hydrating well for days in advance, not just the morning of. And like, these are like all new concepts to me, so it's big aha moments. So I have to make sure that I'm taking care of myself pretty much constantly, because what I do today is going to affect me in 2 days, or it's going to affect my run tomorrow. So I feel like when I really started catching on to that, and it was actually going back to P90X when I realized I would be reading these things, and it was like, well, if you eat certain things the night before you work out the next morning, that's going to help you. And I was like, really? Of course, that's a big duh now to me, but that was a new concept for me. So then I started realizing that with these bigger runs, that I really had to watch what I was eating the day before so that I could be up and ready to go first thing in the morning and just be prepared. So I think like on that, I'm thinking of that 28-mile, 7-hour run. I might have been a little bit bored, but I just kind of stuck it out. And especially because it was kind of a boring trail, because I'm going, it's
For
like
sure.
3-mile loop, but there were horses on the trail and stuff. So it kind of broke it up a little bit. But yeah, I think it's that preparation. There is definitely a mental preparation that you have to do too. You have to get your mind into that fact that you're going to be out there for a long time. But I learned that even with my long runs, and by like, let's say just maybe an 18-mile run in my neighborhood, like going down to Alki Beach and stuff. Early on, I would have to tell myself, today's a 24-mile run, so that when I got to 12, I'd be delighted that I really only had maybe 6 more miles to go and not another 12. So, do you understand what I mean? So I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly. So I would just psych myself out and then be happy when I had 4 or 5 miles to go, and not really the 12 that I pretended, that I had to go. Mm-hmm. And so I've just been able to kind of psych myself out in terms of that. Now I'm just happy. Now I just 18 miles, that's great. Like, let's go. Like, I'm ready for that. And it's so funny because I have friends who are runners, and they would tell me that they would go out for neighbors. These are friends and neighbors of mine, like in the neighborhood. And they would say, oh yeah, we do 6 miles, 6 miles 3 or 4 times a week. And I'm like, how do you have time for that? So it's like crazy. Or my neighbor, Lisa, my former neighbor, she moved. She'd be like, oh, I'm training for a marathon and I'm going to go out for a 18-mile run or, 3 or 4 hours. And I'm like, on a Sunday morning, I'm like, I don't have time for that. That's crazy, and now here I am, the crazy one.
So what is driving you? Why are you doing these? What gets you up in the morning to do these long runs, to prepare?
Yeah. Ooh. So I think number one, having the bigger goal is super motivating for me. Just having that goal. And I am very much a self-motivated person. So I think that coaches can be great for some people. I don't think I like a training plan, and especially a training plan from someone who has coached people doing the things that I'm doing. That's great. But it's very much kind of the rebel in me, I think I reject people telling me what to do. So having a coach probably isn't the greatest thing for me. I think other people need that accountability, and that's good for them, and that's fine. But so for me, having the bigger goal, that's what gets me up in the morning. I'm like, okay, there's no cheating here. Like, really, if I don't feel good, or if I'm really tired, or I didn't eat well the day before and I really don't want to go, I might put off my run till the afternoon or something until I kind of recover. But I can just get up and go, okay, let's do this. Let's get it out of the way, because this is all part of a bigger plan. And I think it's really important to sign up for something, and then you have to make that mental commitment that that's what you're going to do. So that's what motivates me. That's what kind of gets me going. I am grateful every day that I go out for a run, because I didn't have it in my life. I do not take it for granted at all. And I have a lot of people in my life who can't run. They've got bad knees or other issues where they can't do it. And I'm appreciative of the fact that I can, and I'm really grateful to that. So I go out the door and I'm just grateful.
That's a motivator.
Yeah, it is.
How do you feel when you don't run?
Do you mean like on a given day?
I do. I being a runner myself, I miss. I miss the feeling of running when I'm not running. Even if it's a rest day or I'm not supposed to be I'm doing weights or something else.
Yeah.
Do you have that, or does that not?
I think I used to, but I don't anymore because I know that my body needs the recovery. So Mondays are generally my rest day. Sunday, I went out for a 10-mile run and I was tired. And my legs just felt weighted and I was like, oh, I didn't eat enough on Saturday. I know that that's what happened. I didn't eat enough and I went out on Sunday and then I was just feeling tired. I just didn't have my energy level. And so I just thought, okay, so Monday's my rest day. I'm just going to take it as a rest day and take care of myself. And then today today's Tuesday. I had a great run this morning. I was like, oh my gosh, like I just feel so wonderful. After Epic5, I took 2 weeks off and didn't do anything. I think did I go to the gym? No, I went to the gym just to do hot tub and sauna. And I just felt like that was part of recovery. But I just knew that I needed a lot of sleep, to get that recovery mode going, and just a lot of good food and hydration. And I just felt really good about it.
Yeah.
But other than that, I haven't taken a lot of time off from running.
Let's jump into the Epic5, your actual experience.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, so we've learned about what it is and where it was happening. What was the first destination? Take us into that beginning and how you felt about starting this event that you had been training so hard for.
When you say training so hard for, I'm going to back up that even a little bit and tell you that, I ran a 50-miler in September. I feel like even that gets lost from me because it's like that was like a little blip.
Was this your first 50-miler?
It was my first 50-miler. So I had been training for Epic5, expecting it to be in September. And I had even planned travels post Epic5. I had a tour to Ireland that I led in October. And I thought, okay, I'll do Epic5 and then I'll go to Ireland. And what happened was they didn't have enough people signed up for Epic5 in September. So they canceled it. They ended up just moving it into November after my Ireland tour. So I'd been training for Epic5, expecting it to be in September, and then it wasn't. And I thought, okay, I've got to find something else to do. So I found this 50-miler, which I'd always wanted to do anyway. So I thought, okay, I'll just set my sights on the 50-miler. But I had been traveling to Papua New Guinea in August as part of a tour. And in that country, I cannot run because it's just too dangerous. Like I can't go outside basically alone as a woman. I did find some funky ways to get a couple of very short runs in, 30, 40 minutes or so. But I just thought I was not going to be prepared for the 50-miler. I was really concerned about that. So I came back and I was home for maybe 5 weeks before the 50-miler. So just enough time to kind of ramp up miles a little bit and then take a week off, basically just taper for a week and then do the 50-miler. Well, the 50-miler was from Clay Elum in Washington to North Bend. And it was on this trail, and it's basically a decline. So you're losing elevation, like 1,500 feet or something over that time period. So it's
on the Iron Horse Trail, right?
It is the Iron Horse
Trail. Which is a rails to trail converted kind of thing. People can imagine that.
Oh my God, it's fantastic. Mm-hmm. It's the Cascade Super Series Ultra. If anybody out there wants to do anything like that, it's amazing. It's beautiful. And I wasn't sure how I would do with that. I did that in 10 hours, 13 minutes, which I think is a pretty good time. But again, it's a relatively easy trail because it's just a trail. It's like a crushed gravel and dirt trail. But that was a really good practice for me to see mentally how I could stand up to being out there for a long period of time. But then, like the week after, I went to Ireland and I'm on a tour where I don't have a lot of time to train. I can sneak in some runs kind of here and there. But then I got into the Dublin Marathon, which is the day after my tour ended. Total fluke, total coincidence. But then I did the Dublin Marathon, and I used that kind of as a training run for Epic5. And then so that was my training leading up to Epic5, because then a week later, I got home from Ireland, and less than a week later, I was off to Hawaii. So
you are a traveling woman.
I know. And the thing is like, I see people in my Facebook feed who are pretty much doing marathons, 50 milers, and 100 milers every weekend, some assortment of that. And so when I think about what I do, I think it's just really building up your fitness level. Then you're pretty much ready for anything. And I think that's kind of where I am at this point.
I think that's very true. I think once you hit the 50K and you're consistent, that is the distance that you would run to prepare for a 50 mile. Mm-hmm. It's very different than a marathon where you almost, you're getting close to running a marathon to prepare for a marathon. Once you get into if you want to run a 100-mile race, oftentimes you only run 50 to 60 miles to prepare for the 100-mile race.
Only,
yeah. I know, in quotes.
I know.
But the impact on your body and recovery is so important, as you were describing. So I think it's a concept that's hard to grasp if you're a runner who is more like a 10K runner.
Right. Mm-hmm. But it's also, I think it becomes the mental. And when you get past that, when you get past like the 50K mark, I think a lot of that is just a mental, like especially a 50 miler, like what are you going to do for 10 hours? Like I think that's what people want to know, right?
I agree. I think you have to you have to put in your time physically, but that's kind of like a price of entry.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right, you have to do this certain level to be able to sustain the endurance it takes to go through 50 miles to 100 miles. But the mental switch is really where it happens.
The thing for me, especially with a 100-miler, is the lack of sleep. Because, a 50-miler, most people would be 10, 12, maybe 14 hours on that. Mm-hmm. You're in your waking hours anyway. But when you get beyond that, I mean, really there might be 60 milers or 100K, but when you get to a 100-miler, then you're talking 24 hours, 31 hours. That to me, I can't quite grasp. I'm not sure that I want to put my mind through that. Like, I just don't know how I would do sleep deprived. I'm really cranky sleep deprived.
Yeah, it definitely is interesting. And I think you also, you transfer into an area of you have to have your hydration and your food dialed in.
Yeah.
And that's where people fall down on those higher distances. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious to understand in your race, even though it was over a series of days, you're still putting your body through so much. So if we go back to your Epic5 experience, take me into that a little bit now that we've gone on your 50 miler. Now we're towing the line for the start of this.
Yep. So
where's the first one?
So the first one was Kauai, and that's kind of our island. That's our favorite island. So John and I go there often, once or twice a year. And so what we did was we went early. We arrived early, like 4 or 5 days ahead of time, basically to get me used to the heat, because that's what I thought was going to kill me. I had been on Kauai earlier in the year in May, and I'd been out running, and the heat killed me. Like I was like, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to be able to deal with this, because I am so hot. Going out in the morning with a pack filled with ice, with ice water in my water bladder vest thing. And I just thought, oh, this is going to be really, really difficult for me. So I went in advance and went out for some runs, and the heat wasn't so bad. And I was talking to one of the other guys who was running the event, and I said, yeah, I was here in May out in Kapa'a running. And he's like, you mean on that path there along the ocean? Like, that is like the hottest place. And it's like, oh, okay. So it was just that particular area happened to be hotter. There were no trade winds at that point. Mm-hmm. So it was totally exposed. So there was no relief at all. So anyway, the Epic5 started on Kauai. So I was there a few days in advance, which helped just kind of get me used to the heat. I mean, there's not much of a time change, a couple hours or so for that.
What was the temperature range?
So we had, what time did we start? I think we had 6 a.m. starts each day. Yeah, it was 6 a.m. start. And it might have been anywhere from high 50s to low to mid 80s through that range. Because 7, 8 hours, by the time you're done, it's 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was expecting, I made it out, as we often do, I made it out to be much worse than it was. And I'm not saying that it was easy, but I'm just saying that what I had envisioned in my head was a lot of difficult trails, like more technical trails, where I would be stumbling over rocks and tree limbs and, tree roots, and a lot of heat. And it just wasn't the case. So it was about, I'm going to say it was probably 60-40 road running. So it was more roads than trail. And the trails, except for one instance on Oahu, the trails weren't as difficult as I expected. And it just wasn't as hot as I anticipated. So yeah, it just wasn't, it wasn't as difficult as I anticipated. So just to answer your question about the heat. So Kauai was the first one, and there were only 3 of us that ran. So they had a low turnout. Hopefully there'll be more people next year, because it's a fantastic event.
So in total there was 3.
There were 3 of us.
And
yeah.
you and were the other 2 people from?
So one of them was a co-race director and he had never run the course before. Last year he had an injury, so he wanted to come back and actually run it. And the other guy had actually run it last year, and they convinced him to come back and run it again. And I was like, Peter, you're crazy. Like, knowing what you're getting into, you're crazy for coming back.
So you had your own catered race.
Yeah, we basically had our own catered race.
Kind of
so just a few of us. Yeah, it was. So we had the other race director was in a vehicle along with the photographer, who did a phenomenal job. And for those of you who are on Facebook, you might have already seen, I linked to all the photos, which they were just incredible. And the photographer, and then John was in another vehicle. And so the other thing that I wasn't prepared for in a very good way is that, especially because it was a small group of us, they were able to kind of cater to our running pace. And so there were set aid stations, I don't know, maybe it just depended. Sometimes 10 miles apart, because it depended if they couldn't get to a trail or it was another part of the island, might have been further away. But we just saw the vehicle more often than I anticipated. And so there were times where I could just fill up with more ice, or I could have that peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Actually, I carried that in my pack, but I could just have food, or we could say, oh gosh, I really want potato chips. Can you, the next stop, can you just have some potato chips ready, or, whatever. So it was really catered and a little bit easier than I anticipated because of that. So,
well, you probably were really, really prepared, and that makes it feel easier, right? If we build up these stories in our minds.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were you most fearing that did not occur?
The heat. Yeah. So the 2 things really were the heat, and I just anticipated that my legs were going to be so tired that I was going to trip over a tree root
mm-hmm.
and fall. And so that's really where my biggest concern was. And I was never that exhausted. And I'm not quite sure why. Like, I made sure that I had a ton of electrolytes in my pack, and I use Noon, and I'm testing out some other stuff as well. So I had plenty of electrolytes, and I was just never exhausted. My legs were never exhausted like I thought they were. Now, I did a lot of, part of this plan that I had with this coach was strength training. So at least once a week, I was doing 40 minutes of lunges and planks. And so that built up my core mm-hmm. and, my legs.
I think that's so key. I think a lot of people who are runners, mm-hmm. that's where they fall down.
Yeah.
And that
literally.
That's funny. But I believe even as you ramp up your mileage and you have less and less time to run, you're just packing in all these miles. I have over and over rediscovered when I drop even a day of strength, it shows up. There's always something that hurts, or it's like oh, my knee's starting to bother me. Get back
Right.
on strength and everything gets better.
Right. I think yoga is a big part of that as well. I don't think it's pushed enough kind of in the running community.
How much yoga do you put into your schedule?
Not enough. Yeah. What I'd like to do as I lead up to the 4 deserts, and the first one is Namibia in April, is to do 2 strength trainings a week and 1 yoga. So there'll be some days where I'm doing double, so the strength training, you do your strength training, and I'll do that tomorrow on a Wednesday, and then you go for a 40 to 60 minute run. So you're running on tired legs. So you know what that feels like. So my plan is to do a couple of strength trainings and a yoga. And the yoga might be on my rest day. Actually, I did yoga last week. I didn't do it yesterday. But yeah, so a yoga once a week on the yoga just to get all stretched out. And
Some of the active kind of strength training that when I was doing a lot of running, because sometimes I get tired of doing lunges in the garage, is just get outside on a steeper pitch.
Oh, yeah.
And you just go up that and you're doing repeats. I don't know. Sometimes I just don't enjoy being inside doing my workouts. And that just mixes it up a bit.
Well, you kind of live in a place where
it's accessible.
It's very accessible.
Yeah.
And I have to I have to drive anywhere.
But even in West Seattle,
well, there's Lincoln Park.
I used to do those steps because I used to live over there. Those steps are great to go up and down. Yeah, I mean, talk about tired legs.
Do you mean the steps, like the actual
that go down to
Lincoln Park? Yes, I do that. Yeah,
I used to run those with my dog, and my dog figured it out, and he would just wait midway through. Here she goes, back and forth.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, smart dog. So I'm thinking about you're in this race and you're feeling good, but now each day is cumulative effect and impact on your body. And did you just take it in stride every day? Did you have any surprises with your body breaking down or your mind?
Yeah.
Mind or body breaking down that you can share?
Yeah, so the very first day I got a blister on the bottom of my foot. I got a big blister. And in retrospect, I know exactly why I did it. I was being cutesy and I had these little fun socks that I wore. I'm like, I'm going to reserve these socks. These are going to be my little good luck socks. And they turned out not to be so lucky because they just
were a different type of sock?
They were just,
Oh.
They had Be Bold on them. Someone had given them to me and I'm like, these are going to be my good luck Be Bold socks, right?
Tip number 1, you never change your gear on race day.
Isn't that hilarious?
It is.
I know. So I got this unbelievable blister on my very first day. And when I don't think it bothered me. I could kind of feel it. You know what? I think partway through, probably 20 miles through, I stopped and I put Glide or I put something on or Vaseline. I put a bunch of Vaseline on my foot and put my socks back on. So starting the second day, one of the guys who was running was like super helpful and he's just like, I'm just going to bandage you up. So he just each day I went to him and he would apply something on the blister and then tape it up. And then about a mile into the run each day, it stopped bothering me. Like I think that there's like inflammation happens and then it kind of pads it and then you just don't notice it. Right. So I was never really limping. I could feel it every once in a while if I thought about it. Like everyone was like, how's your blister? And I'm like, it's fine until someone asks because I would just forget about it.
It's true, right?
Yeah. So that was fine. So each day I was dealing with that. John was pretty concerned about it and he was kind of keeping an eye on me, like on my attitude about it. But I wasn't too concerned. I mean, I just knew that that was not going to stop me. After all that time, that was not the thing that was going to stop me. One of the things that I would say is that I went into each one kind of with an idea of what to expect. And I wouldn't say that I actually went into them each like this is the only one that I'm doing. Just get through this one. Like I knew that it was part of a bigger context with all 5 races, but there was something about it of just tackle this one. Just think about this one. Don't be overwhelmed by the bigger picture. just tackle this one.
Right. Be present in that race, in that moment, and not focus
worry
so far ahead.
Yeah, not worry about what's coming up or like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this 5 days in a row? It's just like, today's one day. I'm just going to do this one day. So the first one was Kauai, and the next one was Oahu. And I was most worried about Oahu because I had heard that the trail was difficult. So it was about 10 miles of road and then 10 miles of trail. And I knew that it was steep and that it was kind of never ending and that it would be difficult. And it was. And the technical part was just, it was much shorter than I expected. It was 40 minutes up. And when I got to the top, I was like, that's it? Oh, like here I was all worried about this.
The lore of the really hard trail.
Yes, exactly. And then I had built it up so much that it wasn't that difficult. So I got to the top. We all met up, congregated there, took a little rest. And then it was pretty much running along this ridge on the North Shore. And
that sounds beautiful. Or was it scary?
No, it was more beautiful. It wasn't scary at all. It was a big, Jeeps can go. It was a big track, but it sucked because it never stopped. So it was just like, it was up and then down, and then it was back up and it was down, and it was wet. So, there was like dodging huge puddles and stuff. And I just thought, oh man, just please let this be over. This is just going on. I was texting John. He's like, I said, we're not even at the top yet. We're not even across the ridge. But that was difficult. And then I think one of the guys we were running with, he wasn't feeling great that day as well. So it was just, I was expecting it to be difficult. It wasn't quite as difficult as I anticipated, but that going across that ridge, it was just like never ending up and down. I just thought, are you shitting me? Like another 4 miles?
Now, were these other two people, were we all kind of in the same pace?
At that point, we kind of were. And I think there's a couple reasons for it. I think, and that was the case for the first day too. I think the co-race director, Chris, I know on the first day he would go ahead a little bit just to make sure that he knew the route, that we weren't going to get lost. So he was kind of checking things out, but he would always wait up for me and for Peter. So we kind of kept together. And I also think, I was the unknown, right? They didn't know if I don't think they would ever tell me really what they thought, but here's this 5'2" gal who comes in I think I'm pretty quiet, I'm whatever. And I wonder what they really thought. Oh, she's never going to make it. Like, I don't know. But anyway, so I think because I was the unknown, I think Chris in particular, he felt some responsibility. He probably wanted to just kind of keep an eye on me and see how things were going. I don't know. So the first 2 days, we were kind of much closer together. And even on the third day, we were on Molokai, and I think we ran a little bit further apart on that day. I think at that point, part of it was I didn't mind kind of being back a little bit further. And I think no one ever said this, but I think they just both felt more confident in the run and in me so that they would kind of go ahead, and I didn't care. And that was fine. I also think Peter fully admitted that he didn't even train for it. I don't think it was kind of
he was our last minute.
Yeah, it was a last minute decision. And he said, oh, I haven't run more than an hour in months or something like that. Right. So he was using it as a training run to get to the third and the fourth and the fifth day. So he was slower in the beginning anyway. So I think when they got their pace, they were much further ahead of me, and that was totally fine. So Molokai, I was a little disappointed with Molokai because I had been there before and I had this kind of vision of what I didn't know what the route was going to be, but I just had this vision of what Molokai was and is. And it turned out to be more boring for me than I anticipated. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's why no one spends a lot of time on Molokai.
Oh, is that right?
It's just not as beautiful. It's like, bottom line, it's like they are the nicest people on the planet, because I've got friends who live there and they are so sweet. And there's so little going on there that it's really neat, like that it's a Hawaiian island, because there's just, it's really, really low key. And there are definitely beautiful parts of it. But yeah, we ran through some beautiful farmland. Like the first 7 miles or something was gorgeous, but then it wasn't quite as stunning as I expected. Then Maui, I was really looking forward to Maui because we started at Haleakala.
Oh my goodness.
Which is like, what is it? Like 9 or 11,000 feet or something like that.
Definitely at altitude a bit there.
Yeah, definitely at altitude, but it's downhill. Oh yeah, I love downhill. This is going to be great. So we get up there at sunrise, and I didn't anticipate that it was going to feel like I was wearing a 30-pound pack. I wasn't, but I felt so heavy from the altitude.
Because you didn't acclimatize at all.
No.
Boom, you're there.
Yeah, we just drove right up, right? And so Chris and Peter, they were fast, and they took off, and we would kind of connect at like the aid stations, with the car or whatever, but they were just much faster than I was, and I just was so surprised at going downhill. You would think, you're not going to really feel the altitude. I just really felt it, and it was frustrating for me because I thought, this was the one that I thought was going to be so easy. And it was day 4 too, right?
Were you on the road or was there a trail?
There's a trail.
Oh, there is?
There is a trail from Haleakala. Cool. Yeah, well, I had no idea. So yeah, you go past the viewing points, and then there's a trail that goes down the back side and around and down this really cool area. It was gorgeous. And then you're looking.
And when you're on that trail, are you seeing many other hikers or people?
Nobody.
Just you guys?
Nobody.
That's awesome.
There was a point where there was another viewpoint where people could go from the other side. They could drive up like in a Jeep from the other side. And I saw a few people, but there was basically nobody up there. It was amazing.
So as you went down, did you start to gain any kind of, just the whole time?
No, the whole time. The whole time was really difficult.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you this. Do you think it was all altitude? Or do you feel like, well, it was day 4?
It was a combination. I think it was altitude. I think it was day 4 accumulation. And I think it was disappointment that I didn't feel better. So I think I felt frustrated. Like I just felt like, I thought this was my day. And it wasn't.
Okay, let's talk about that. What do you do when you're in these, physical situations and things aren't working out as you think? Did you do anything to snap you out of it, or nothing ever snapped out?
You know what? I'll get to that because it happened later in the race. So what happened was, we got down to the bottom of the hill, and then someone said, after this, it's just rolling hills, but the last 6 miles are up. You're going to hate the last 6 miles because it's straight up, but you got this whole rolling thing. So either I misheard or it was misrepresented.
Often the second. I never listen to people.
Well, I don't know. I'll take it. I'll own it. I'll own it. But I got down to the bottom of the hill, and I was like, okay, thank goodness. Now it'll be gentle rolling, and I'll take this until I get to the last 6 miles. It was another frickin' at least 3 miles up. And, so then I'm just pissed, because I didn't expect it. It's all about the expectations, right? So then it's okay if your expectations are off and you think it's worse than it's going to be. And it's, you're pleasantly surprised. But then I had to do like 3 miles up. And I was just like, this just sucks, and I'm just like stomping my way up, not running, I'm walking. So it was probably 3 miles up, and then it was rolling, then it was kind of nice. But then I get to mile 20 or to mile 24 or whatever, and it was 6 miles up the hill, up 6 miles up. So I walked it. That's where I had a Coke, and I don't drink Coke, but I was like, I'm like, who's got the Coke? Somebody pull over and give me, can you pull over at the next place and give me a Coke? So I had a Coke, and so I was walking with this bottle of Coke, but it was really difficult. And I just thought this was really interesting. I was like, I want to cry. This is hard. And I was like, I don't even have anything to cry about because I'm not in pain. I just want it to be over. So buck up, because there's nothing to complain about. It's going to be over. Like, I know that there is an end. I'm going to be at the pool at the Grand Hyatt on Kauai in 2 days.
Right.
So, and time just keeps moving. So this will have an end. So you're not going to finish this any faster if you stop or if you go any slower. So just keep going. Like, that's that. I just had to keep putting one foot in front of the other. So I thought, okay, what can I do? And we can talk about like what you think about and that kind of thing too, because I think that's interesting. But when I run in Seattle, I usually have a podcast, or I've got music or something all queued up. And I had stuff queued up for this, thinking that I was going to use it more frequently, but I didn't. I was just in the moment and appreciating the Hawaiian views. But I thought, I'm going to start listening to something. And as soon as I put a podcast in or I put music on, it changed everything. So I'm probably 3 miles up this hill. So I've got just a few miles left to go. And I put on some music and I could jump for joy. I was so happy. I was like, I do have something left in my tank.
Right.
I can keep going.
So you got yourself out of your head a bit.
I did get myself out of my head. That's actually a really great way to put it. Yeah.
You did something to snap yourself out of this cycle of self-talk that wasn't being productive at that moment.
Yes. That's absolutely right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I got up to the top of the hill. I still had, like, according to my watch, I got up there at mile like 30, and I'm so anal that I had to like find another mile. So everybody was up, taking off their shoes, and they were all relaxing and eating and stuff. And I said, I have another mile to go. So they said, you can go in the forest and you just like go down this hill. And I was like, don't say down a hill, because it means I have to come back up.
Right.
I'm not going in the forest. I'm turning around and I'm going back down the hill, and you guys can meet me, in another mile or so. So then I just went down the hill, and then they drove down. The two cars drove down and then met me down there. But it was snapping myself out of it, and then that helped.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's in life. We hit these places, right? Anytime where you're like, what the?
Well, you know
happening?
What? Yeah, that's actually really true. Change your state. I know some people hate him, but I went to a Tony Robbins seminar a few years ago, and he talks about that. You have the ability to change your state.
Yeah.
And whether you have to put on music, like that's his big thing. It's like you put on music and then you're up and dancing.
Shift.
Right. It does shift. And I think about that. And I do that sometimes if I'm in a funk at home. It's just like, okay, I got to change my state. What can I do to do that? And then just put on some upbeat music.
Yeah, I like that. I oftentimes think about that I choose my thoughts. When I just notice myself in this, like, what is all this judgment or negative thoughts or, feeling barriers instead of opportunities. Yeah, it's like I can choose a different way to think. Nobody is making me think this way. Yeah, it's becoming aware of it, I think.
Well, yeah, and that's what meditation is all about too, is having that presence, literally that presence of mind to do that.
To see. Yeah,
but when you're in a crappy mood, and I don't care if it's, the fourth day of a 50K, 5 miles to go, or it's just having been in a car accident, or just, having a bad day, dropping the turkey on Thanksgiving, or whatever it is, there are ways that you can choose to respond to things. It's sometimes really hard to see that in the moment. But I think, I hadn't thought of that phrase in so long, that change your state. So thank you for bringing that up, like just being able to change your mind and having a trigger for it.
I was going to ask you if you have any mantras that you've ever used in running, especially long.
No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the music is great, but in some of my endurance events, when I start to push my mind and body, into that zone where you're like, I've never been here, and I'm getting really tired, or kind of afraid what could happen with some of the weather or different situations, or I'm afraid my body's going to break down and not be able to keep going. Like that point, I have started dropping into these mantras, and I just randomly did it when I was going to the South Pole, and I would just start saying, strong, powerful.
Oh, wow.
Strong. Every step, strong breath, powerful step, strong.
Yeah.
And I just started doing it randomly because from my mountaineering experience, you do the rest step kind of thing at altitude, but I didn't have this mantra, and it helped. I just got hypnotized by it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Especially because I couldn't access music and anything in those conditions. So and it was very like I needed to be attention. Really worked. Yeah. So
I'm going to use that. I'll use that in Namibia. I'll remember.
Or whatever words work for you. But
Right,
I've read
right.
other books with athletes that they choose the thing that just kind of, you can do it. You can do it. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Whatever that self-talk that puts you in the positive, and it's great to practice it.
I had a boyfriend years and years and years ago. And the very first trip, pretty much the first trip I ever took out of the country was to India. And India is not a starter tour. Like, that's not the first place you ever want to go. But he really wanted to go to India. And I was like, okay, I'll go. So I ended up hating it and went to Nepal. We went to Nepal for like a month. And we were doing some trekking there. And he was much more fit than I was. And we trekked. And my mantra was, I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. Yeah. And that was the very unenlightened, unaware 22-year-old or 21-year-old, whatever I was at that time, 20-year-old. I don't know how old I was then. Yeah, that was really tough.
Let's talk about this for a minute.
Yeah.
I think you make an interesting point. It triggers something for me. When we have expectations on ourselves versus when we think others have expectations that they're putting on us, especially in the physical world. If people are ahead of you, or if you're running with other people and you feel like you're keeping them behind what their capabilities are. Have you ever experienced that in your training or these races and noticed that feeling, and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because in that case with this former boyfriend, it was really frustrating for me because I felt alone on that, and that's not how I wanted to feel. And he was just cruising ahead, and I just felt like I was being left behind, and it wasn't fun for me.
Right.
Now I might appreciate that. I'd be like, go ahead. I'm just for whether it's confidence or the ability to be alone, or just knowing that the pressure isn't there. I'm not sure why I can do that. But, like when these guys were running ahead of me on these events, I didn't feel like that was fine. I thought, great, they're going at their own pace, and it didn't bother me. I didn't feel pressure to keep up. And I did feel a little bit like, oh, I hope I'm not holding them up too much. And when we got to the top at Maui, and they were there, I was like, oh, how long have you guys been here? And they said, oh, like 20 minutes. And I was like, oh, really? I thought you were here like for 45 minutes. And they're like, no, we walked up the hill. We walked the entire way.
Right.
So they had to.
Right.
But yeah, there is some of that, like kind of the story that we tell, especially if we're running with somebody else. But I have to be really careful if I'm training with, if I go on like a training run, like there's a group here in the Seattle area called the High Heel Running Group. And it's all ladies, and just really fun group that go out on a Saturday morning. And I'm supposed to be doing zone 2 training, which is pretty slow, but like distance, but slow. And I just have to remember, like, I'm not here to prove anything. I'll be in the back with people who are slow because they can't go any faster. Like, just that's just what they do. But I just have to remember, nobody's judging me. Do your own pace. Be confident in your own pace.
That's right. I can remember back to when I was starting to amp up running, and I would feel bad that I was behind.
Yeah.
And I caught myself saying sorry. Sorry. And I'm like, I don't have anything to be sorry for.
No.
And that self-talk.
Right.
And, whereas over the years, now I'm back, I'm in that same mindset where you're like, I'm confident where I am. And even if I'm supposed to be training in a certain place and my body can't do it today, that is okay. That is okay. That self-acceptance and that just we're pushing ourselves and because we want to, and it's for our own intrinsic motivation. We're not trying to prove that we can keep up with so-and-so. Coming to that is kind of an evolution. It was for me, at least. I don't know if other people have that in their training.
Well, look how we do that with everything, though. Just everything. I remember I drove, what did I have? I had an old car years ago, 25 years ago or something. And I remember being self-conscious driving from Seattle to the east side, because on the east side, everybody has BMWs and Lexuses and, just super nice cars. But isn't that crazy?
Right. And I think that as we get more mature, or maybe actually younger people today are more mature and don't think this way. But I think it's just, again, becoming aware of those thoughts that go through our mind that keep us back, that hold us back. We're holding ourselves back and we try to project that on other people or circumstances. And it's not the case. So one thing that also popped in my head as we were chatting is I don't know if you talk about your age, but, I think that's an interesting thing to point out that, you're embarking on things that are pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and, you're in your 50s.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I do. I talk about that a lot. So I turned 54 like 3 days after Epic5. So yeah, again,
that's like a mindset.
Yeah, it is. It is a mindset. And it's more than anything, it was a challenge for myself to say, what am I capable of because I'm 50? I think that if I hadn't had 50, I wouldn't have thought to run a marathon. I'm like, no, how can I challenge myself because I'm turning 50?
See what I'm made of at 50.
Yes, exactly.
Totally.
You know what? I had heard people saying, some people in my world, that they were 57 and they said, yeah, I'm good with 75. I'm good if I died at 75. And I just thought, oh my God, that's right around the corner. There's so much more to life. And 50 is not the downhill. I'm healthier now than I've ever been. Certainly healthier than I was at 21 when I was trekking up Nepal,
right.
Trekking through Nepal. So it's crazy. And I feel like I am constantly looking at ways to be healthier of mind and body, both.
Yeah. Well, it's inspiring hearing what you're setting in front of yourself. It's great.
Yeah.
I would love to hear, so you get to the last island, and how did it feel? You're approaching that. Take me through I'm almost done, and getting to the finish line.
Yeah. So the big island was the Hawaii island, was the final one. And it was a little sad, you think back on it. And I think I thought in advance, oh no, I'm not going to be sad. I'm just going to be so happy to have it over. But I was kind of relishing it, just really appreciating it. And part of it was that it was more beautiful than I anticipated. We took this old highway that was it was miles and miles and miles of rolling hill and farmland and just absolutely gorgeous. So I took lots of photos. Throughout the whole thing, I took a lot of photos. I stopped and would pull out my phone and just snap pictures and stuff. So I was appreciating the experience the whole time, but it was really beautiful. And I wasn't looking forward to the very end of it, the last couple of miles, because I had heard we were going to Waipoli Valley. I think I might have the name wrong. Waipolio Valley. People will know what that is if they've been there or have wanted to go. But it was gorgeous. So we got to this viewpoint, and I knew that it was going to be straight down and straight back up. That's how it was described. So I knew it was going to be difficult. So we got to this viewpoint and we all stopped and the group was there. And I had pulled out my phone and I saw a message from a runner friend of mine. She was actually on the podcast too, Beth Baker. And she had sent me, like, I'm going to cry just thinking about it. She had sent me a little YouTube video. It wasn't the video, it was just really the music of ELO singing Mr. Blue Skies, which we had talked about that it was the perfect running song. And so I get to the end and there's this amazing view, like get to this viewpoint. There's this amazing view. I know that there's only this like downhill and then back up the hill left. And then here's this amazing song that, I was like, oh my God, this is like the best thing ever. The timing was just absolutely perfect. So there was that. So it's just like this feeling of elation, which I'm getting goosebumps, just like thinking about it right now. But it turns out that if anybody's ever done this, you don't run down the hill and you do not run up the hill. It is so steep. I don't even know what the grade is for this, but it is like, it would be dangerous to run down the hill. So we just all walked as a group. So it was the three of us, the runners, and then it was one of the runners' families, his wife and adorable little daughter, like, how old was she? Maybe 4. And John and the other race director. So there were, 8 of us or something, and the photographer. And we just all meandered down and we chatted, and then we got down there and took some photos, and then we hauled back up, which was a really difficult walk back up, and then we finished right there. So that was the final day. So
you got to be with your community of supporters.
Yes. Yeah. And finish it up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important to acknowledge those kind of folks who, you've mentioned John many times, and that's just how much he was there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But it does take a village. It takes not only the people who are physically present, but it takes the people who are sending text messages or posting on Facebook, making comments and saying things on Instagram. You may not remember the individual things. It's like when it's your birthday on Facebook and you get 400 likes and all these comments and everything. You may not remember the individual ones, but the collective is really a boost. And it is very much like that with, like, I was posting every day on Facebook, all the experiences and the photos and everything. And just to know that people were kind of watching and being inspired by it is really powerful. Like, there's a responsibility there almost that people are kind of watching, and I don't think in this particular case, I didn't need that boost quite as much. I've been in other marathons or done other things where I've been like, oh, people are watching, make them proud kind of thing. Like, just keep going, just make that kind of the motivation.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that people who may not be runners might not be aware. I mean, running is such a solo experience. You have to put one foot in front of the other, but you are connected to so many other people through that experience, as you just described, which, I love it also because you're just connected to the outdoors at the same time. So it provides kind of this whole connectivity, as you said.
Yeah. Well, that brings up a good point too, is that, and it's so funny because I had Katie Arnold on the podcast, and she's an author, writer. She writes for Outside magazine, but she has also done some really long endurance stuff. And I know
her book is really good. Running Home.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that was fabulous.
Really good book.
So I had asked her, I'm like, what do you think about, when you're running? Because I couldn't imagine. I'm like, you're out there for so long. What do you think about? And then someone asked me that last weekend, and I was like, good point. That question back at me. And I've been like, I wasn't consciously thinking about it at the time. Oh, what are you thinking about? So that when someone asks you, but what happened was, and I've given this some thought since then, since Epic5, is that when I run in my neighborhood, I think because I'm doing kind of the same paths, as beautiful as they are, I'm doing kind of the same routes. I have my podcast and I have my music. And so when I need motivation, I can kind of go to those things. And I usually always have something that I'm listening to. For Epic5, I thought I had everything all queued up. I thought I was going to be, as long as I wasn't running with other people, I thought that I was going to have something in my ears constantly. And I didn't. I think I was just taking in the sights I think that I don't think I was like so tuned into my body, like what you might think, or trying to be present. I just think it was a natural thing of like, wow, look at that farmland. Oh my gosh, cows. Or, oh, look at that. Look at the palm trees. Look at the beautiful ocean. Look at this view. I'm going to stop and take a picture. Oh no, I'll wait a couple minutes. Oh, the sun's rising. There's like always something.
All new.
It was all new. There's always something. And other than Maui, when really it was really difficult and I was having to really talk myself into continuing on. Yeah, for the most part, I was just soaking it up. There was a time, I can't remember, it might have been on Molokai. I think it was on Molokai where I did have to pull out a podcast, and I was listening to Conan O'Brien, and I just like bursting out laughing as I'm running because it was just so funny, and I needed that little extra motivation there. But, for the most part, I think I was just enjoying the process, which I didn't anticipate.
Yes, that's awesome. You kind of take yourself off of that autopilot that as we train in the same place over and over, it sort of feels sort of autopilot-y.
Right.
I've had that experience.
Right.
And that new experience, the new play, everything new, it's sort of like it's stimulating all your senses.
Right, that's true.
And taking your mind off of your tired legs. And
when I did the 50 miler, I thought the same thing. I thought I've got to have like 10 to 12 hours of stuff queued up because, I'm going to need it. And it turns out it's like the first 6 miles I ran with other people. That was a much bigger race. So there were like more people to kind of run with. So I ran with a bunch of people, and then it was beautiful route. So I'm enjoying the route, and I'm stopping to take photos because I wasn't feeling like I had to beat a time specifically, so I was taking photos. And then it was just a matter of getting to the next aid station, so I just thought, okay, so it's another 4 miles, just kind of keep running, keep going, and then you'll get to the next aid station. And then before I knew it, 40, 50 minutes went by and I was at the next aid station, and then got a little bite to eat, and then got on to the next one.
So I love that description that you just gave about everything being new and seeing everything. What else can you share that you got out of this whole experience that you've just described to us?
Anything is possible. Telling myself for 45 years, basically, that I wasn't a runner. And then to find myself doing a marathon, and, even with Honolulu, cursing my way through the end of that, thinking I never wanted to do another marathon again. And even after running Honolulu, I remember walking around stiff-legged, kind of wobbling back and forth, really finding it hard to walk. And now I finished the 50 miler, and I was like, okay, let's go out for a active, recovery walk. I'm ready. Like even after 10 hours of running. What I spent my life telling myself was just a story. And I changed my story from I'm not a runner to how can I run? And then just always challenging myself, going a little bit further and a little bit further. So what am I possible? Like what is possible? What am I capable of? And outside of running, we should be doing that every day. And I know that not everybody's a runner. Like I get that. But what are the stories that you tell yourself that you can't do? And stop, just like give pause and say, is that just a story, or is that truth?
Right.
And just stopping yourself from telling that story when the only reason it's true is because you're not trying, or because you believe the story that you've told yourself.
Right. And I think also, if you say, I don't want to be a runner, as you're saying, well, what do you want to be that you've never allowed yourself?
Maybe it's a cook.
Right. Maybe you've always wanted to be a public speaker, but you're really afraid of being judged and that you're not good enough. It really comes down to, are we good enough? And are we, sometimes I believe people are afraid of success, not just failure. What if I can do that?
Yeah,
what's that going to what's my life going to look like now?
Yeah. I think, is it Marianne Williamson? There's a quote from one of her books. Our greatest fear is not that we can't do something, but it's like, what if we can do something? And I'm totally paraphrasing that, I've got it.
That's what I'm kind of referencing, something like that. I didn't realize that was.
Yeah. I have it. I have it hanging on my wall in my office. Yeah. I think we don't even realize that. Like, what if we succeed at this? What happens then?
And how do you, what tips would you have to give people about, it's easy to say, just go do it, what is it, that, how can I get over that if I'm the one who has that belief? How can I flip it? How can I start?
Well, first you just have to be aware of it. And I think that's the problem, because I know for myself, I don't even think we are aware that we're telling ourselves that we can't do a particular thing.
Yeah, we just go away from it.
Yeah. Or just, we don't even think about it as a negative. So I think being aware of it is the first thing. And then it's just taking small steps to get there. I just saw a movie. It's on Amazon. It's called Brittany Runs a Marathon. And it's an adorable movie. It's so great. Have you seen it?
I saw the preview, so I haven't watched it.
Yeah, it's I highly recommend it because she's taking small steps to get to where she wants to be. And she's an every girl. She doesn't have a superpower. Hey, I don't have a superpower.
That's right. I think that's it.
And I think, maybe I have a superpower, but I don't do the things that I do because of a superpower. We all have strengths, right? And I think it's tapping into that strength and tapping into the strength and making that work for us. For me, it can be liking being alone, liking my alone time. Like, maybe that's my superpower. And so I don't mind going out for a long run and being by myself. Maybe somebody else's superpower is being very social, and their motivator is to go out and be with other people when they go run.
Exactly.
So it's just figuring it out, how to make it all work. Or, I bring up cooking because I'm not a great cook. So that's a story that I tell myself, right? But what if I just told myself a different story and found the thing that I am good at cooking?
So we know that you've described your what's next already. Because this is your stepping stone.
The 4 deserts.
Is there anything else you want to tell us about that and how you're going to prepare for that now? When's the first one start?
So first one is Namibia in April. And so I'm just at about 4 months right now of training. So I'm about 4 months out. So the big thing for me is it's gear testing, and it's food, and it's having the right socks.
Definitely. Because will you be running in sand in some of these?
Yeah.
That's a major.
I think they have little booties that you have to
out.
wear, or it's recommended, these little booties for the sand. Yeah, but it's getting out into different terrains. It's doing saunas to get myself prepared for the heat. Although I think it's not going to be as hot as I anticipated it to be. So I think I'm still looking at 70, 80s or so for that, for the most of them, other than Antarctica, which is like, I don't know. You tell me. It's like below
20 below.
Yeah, something
average.
like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's getting really serious about the training, the strength training, and being super disciplined about those. I do have some travel planned that I just need to work around. Mm-hmm. Like Morocco, I'm going to be leading a trip to Morocco in February, and it's also probably not always a safe place for me to be running. So I'm going to try to hire a guide. I'm going to try to hire someone.
That's a great idea.
To run with me.
There's a good problem solution kind of thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that I can, even if I have to get up at 4 a.m. mm-hmm. and go for an early run, before meeting my group, if I can go out, so it's going to be dark. If I can go out with somebody who can kind of act as it's not like I'm overstating it that I need like a bodyguard, but I should have somebody with me. I should not be a female out running by myself.
Right.
So yeah, finding a solution for that. And now I'm testing out food because I have to carry all of my food. It's about 14,000. So for the 4 deserts, there's a required equipment list.
Right.
And if you show up without something, they don't let you run. So I have to have everything on the list. And that includes at least 14,000 calories of food because you have to feed yourself for basically 6.5 days, I would say, because on that 7th day, it's a short run and then you're done. So I've got to have all that food with me. So I'm testing stuff out at this point, and then again, testing out equipment. I'm going to start. I'm already carrying a pack that's probably 9 pounds. So I'm going to slowly build up the weight, start doing pull-ups, do my push-ups, get my core and my arm strength ready for all that stuff as well. And then I was just at an event last week in Austin called the Running Event. It's where companies come and show off all their gear.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm working with some companies to get some new gear in my hand so I can, start testing that kind of thing. But from shoes to running packs and hydration packs and stuff. So
great. Well, after we're done, I will show you our running packs that I really like.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
okay.
Which we used for fast packing, and our fast packs are about 17 pounds. So that might be
what's the company?
Ultraspire is one, and Ultimate Direction is
the
the
other. I have 2 Ultimate Directions that I'm using. I've got 3 Ultimate Directions that I'm using.
Yeah, that's
right
a
now,
really good. There's some really good packs there.
Yeah, I think the biggest one I have is a 30 liter.
I think the most important thing after that is to make sure it's comfortable to your body.
Yeah.
To your body. So
these are pretty comfortable.
Yeah. Adding that weight is a big deal. I don't know if going from ultra running to ultra running with weight, that's a big deal. It is.
25 pounds.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, it'll be going down at least every day.
Yes, I know exactly. That's the good thing about it. Yeah.
Well, good luck. That sounds like a big challenge.
Yeah, it will be.
It's a next step. And I'm going to be cheering you on. This is going to be fun. 5 or 4? 4.
Oh, here's the other thing. So it's called the 4 deserts. Most people do 1 a year. I hear whatever, I hear about it and I'm like, of course I have to do all 4, right?
So that's a special club, right?
Yeah, it is a special club. I think there's like 66 people who've done all 4 in a year. Maybe 18 women have done it. Each year they add in a bonus one, a 5th, which isn't a desert. So I think last year, or maybe this year, they did New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken. And next year they're doing Georgia, the country, to fly into Tbilisi and the
Are you doing the 5th
Caucasus. Well, that was not my plan until John saw photos of it. And he was like, oh, you're totally doing this one. Because he wants to go. He's volunteering. So
is it in the middle of all of it?
It is.
Okay. Well,
it is in the middle of it.
The challenge keeps growing.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is that I'm leading a tour to Papua New Guinea. I wasn't even sure it was physically possible for me to get from Papua New Guinea to Tbilisi in time for the races. And I sent a note off to my travel agent. I was like, hey, Emma, is this even possible? And she was like, oh my God, you're a dream. You give me like the best problems to solve. She said, I figured it out. So I can get you there in time.
So now you have no excuse.
Now I have no excuse. And that's called the Grand Slam Plus. So Grand Slam is all 4. This is Grand Slam Plus. And there's only 2 women who've done that. So that's
pretty awesome.
That would be a good club.
And approximately how many people do each of these races?
I think about 100.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
if I'm not mistaken, there's about...
You'll be among a
there's 100.
Group.
And you can only do Antarctica if you've done 2 of the other races. Mm-hmm. So that is so limited that they only allow a certain number of people in, and you have to have completed two of the other races.
If you need any beta on Antarctica, I'd be happy to chat with you.
I know. I still have your book next to my bedside table that I have to read. So I am
awesome.
I am really looking forward to that.
So if listeners don't know, I was in Antarctica now. It's been 6 years ago now. Yeah, but I was not running. I was dragging a 220-pound sled behind me.
Yeah,
but
which I think is worse.
They're definitely different.
Yeah.
But yeah, happy to chat with you about that and gear and stuff.
Yeah, great.
Hey, so Beth, there was a question from one of your Patreon supporters that was regarding recovery, and you keep pushing your body from one event to the next. How does your body recover? What do you do?
Yeah, that's great. I think Dana had asked that, and thank you for being a Patreon supporter,
Of course.
too. And I'll talk about that probably in the intro or outro or whatever, so people know how they can become involved. So yeah, recovery is really interesting, and kind of how my body responded to the runs. First, this is for Epic5, I will say I was a little taken aback that my entire body became inflamed. Like I just thought certain things like would become inflamed. Like I would have sore ankles or sore knees. My face was puffy. And I still don't even know why that was. I haven't taken the time to kind of look that up or research it, but one of the guys on the run said, yeah, that happens. So I was just puffy. So I think my body was like, what are you doing? And just like everything got inflamed. And
Can I give you some potential insight about that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, because number one, I think it happens more to women. And number two, I think it has a lot to do with water and electrolyte balance.
Yeah.
And it's making sure you're in balance. So if you go out of balance at all, you retain the water and puffiness, along with it could be inflammation. But I think it has to do a lot with water retention.
Water retention.
Because
even in your face?
Possibly. I had it going into the cells of my legs. And if it was hot, I'm not sure if it was hot, but that definitely exaggerates it. So that could be a potential to think
that's
about.
interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. So that was just weird to like look at myself in the mirror and go like, I don't look good, just like I look puffy. Just that was kind of weird. But in terms of recovery, there were some specific things that I did, really simple things to begin with. Like we would get in the car, and for one, I really tried to eat well because I think that's really important. I know sometimes people like after a marathon, they go for a beer and a pizza, and that is just not me. The first thing I do is I go for a smoothie, like a protein smoothie, and I've got all these superfoods and stuff that I put in the smoothie too. So I try to replenish myself using that, and I think that is really helpful. I didn't have access to all of that stuff on these races, although I had some of it. It just wasn't that kind of immediate go for my shake, my regular smoothie kind of thing. But I do try to replenish my body with some healthy food rather than going for like a pizza just because I can, because I just burned thousands of calories. And I do think that that's super helpful. I got in the car and I would put my feet up, so but my feet would be up on the dash. And that sounds really minor, but I think that was also just super healthy to do something like that. I think the bigger picture here is making sure that on a daily basis, I think this may sound kind of weird, but I personally think that recovery starts long before you're even running. It's the buildup. And like I said earlier, that what I eat today is going to affect my performance in a day or two. I also think that it's going to affect my recovery. So if I am eating breads and other things that are inflammatory to me, I think that's just going to add to the recovery time. So I think it's really important to take care, like just for me, I think it's really important to be aware of that stuff and to take care of myself in advance so that when I do stress my body, it just has an easier time to recover. So that's like kind of the simple answers in terms of that. And that's the cheap ones. I think that's the stuff that's accessible to everybody. Now, I do a lot of things that probably go overboard. And I also would say that I don't think that any one thing is ever
the thing.
It's not the thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's not the magic.
Collective.
It's not the magic bullet. Mm-hmm. So I have a host of supplements that I take. And some are just your kind of off the shelf, vitamin C, just keeping my immune system boosted. And then other things are like B12 because I mostly eat vegan. So I've got to have that in my diet. And just other things like, D3 and DHA and EPA and that sort of thing. I think actually Dana had asked about, I think when she said when she was working out, she took BCAAs, so branched chain amino acids. I don't do those, although I should kind of test it out to see how that might help. But I do other things that are, I think, that repair cells. And if anybody's interested, they can ask me, because it's like it's kind of crazy, almost anti-aging type of things. There's NMN, fisetin. I do L-glutamine. That's a little bit more common. So L-glutamine, and there's another one that sounds like L-glutamine, but acetyl something or other. I can't remember. I've got these whole bottles of stuff. But I do a lot of that kind of thing too that I think helps. After I go for a run at home, I take tart cherry juice. I take a shot of that because it's an anti-inflammatory, and I think that helps. So it's just kind of all of these things that add up, and sleep is the big thing too. Now that was really hard on Epic5 because by the time we finished up, we ate, we got on a plane, got to the next place, ate again, or got food for the evening, got to the Airbnb or the hotel, and got everything set for the next day. It would probably be sometimes 9, 10 o'clock. And you're not going to go to sleep right away. And then you got to get up at 4:30. So maybe you're getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And that's really rough.
That's rough.
Yeah. So that was the big thing. I think that's going to be a problem in Namibia. I think on the 4 deserts as well, because all the runners have to sleep in a tent together. So you don't get your own private tent. And I don't think we're not all in one tent, but you might be sleeping with 10 other people who snore, and who make noises and do other things and get up and go pee for the night, and you're waking up. So I have to have kind of that part of it dialed in too. And I think if I want to help myself sleep, I'll take like a valerian root or something, or have a tea that might help me, like a kava drink that'll help me sleep. I almost think that it's worth carrying those little things that I can take before I go to bed so that I can sleep better. The other thing that I do is it's an e-stim device, electric stimulation device. What I have is called a Mark Pro, and I put it on my knees. It's these pads that go on my knees, and it hooks up to a little electrical unit, and I turn it on, it's a pulsating thing, and there's 2 electrodes that have a really high buzz factor, and then 2 that have a pulsing factor, and I put them on my knees and my ankles. Now, I wouldn't have this on the 4 deserts, but I do that, and it brings blood flow to the area, and that I think helps a lot too. And massage at home. I do massage every couple of weeks or so, and that's a relatively new thing for me because I think that's really important to recovery as well. So, but sleep is the big thing, and I'm actually sleeping more. I have a thing called an Aura ring, which tracks my sleep patterns, and I am making myself like stay in bed and sleep more than I've ever in my life. So I'm getting an extra hour of sleep or so a night, which I think
your body's
helps.
saying, yay!
Yeah, which helps in the recovery. But again, a lot of those are free or normal or just life choices in terms of recovery. And then some of those are just added bonuses that I personally believe in, that work for me. And they might be expensive too. So that's why I'm saying there's lots of free or inexpensive options that you could just incorporate into your life. And then I just spend the extra money rather than going to doctors or paying, for expensive health insurance. I mean, I have like catastrophic insurance, but I just use that money for maintenance.
So I have one small thing to add to your recovery.
Yeah.
Because that was a great overview of recovery. Is there's scientific research that shows if you, within that 30-minute window, I don't know if you mentioned that, but you've just done a hard workout and you need to replenish for the next workout. So that 30-minute window after you stop is when you should be giving yourself enough carbohydrates.
It's like 4-to-1. I think it's a 4-to-1 ratio carbohydrates to protein.
Yeah, and even if you're not worried about the ratio as much, that's the window that your cells will absorb what you're putting in your body more, and then it shuts down your mitochondria shuts down. So that's actually part of the two-day staggering. If you don't do that, say you just did a 4-hour run, then that 2 days later still is going to have that lag if you don't feed your
that's
body.
interesting. Right.
Feed your body at that moment. And of course, more.
Right.
More than just that moment.
Right.
Because you need more calories.
Right.
But yeah, if you can get 1,000 in, even 1,000 right there.
Yeah, I do that. I had, let's see. Oh, yeah. You know what? I found this great little, it was like a sippy cup at some store. Yeah, it was in Hawaii, but I found this little cup, and I swear it was like a sippy cup. It might have been like 12 or 16 ounces. And I took out the straw, and that's what I made my shakes in.
Yeah.
So I would put my protein powder, I would buy a little container of soy milk, and then just had that all shaken up, ready to go with my superfood powders in there. And then when I finished my run, the first thing I did was I downed that.
That's great.
At the end of the race.
Yeah, perfect.
Again, can't do that in the 4 deserts, but I can't afford to carry that stuff with me. I think that stuff is going to be too heavy. Even if I just mix.
But even if it's just some part of your calories that you just allocate to that time.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're going to probably be calorie deficient in that race.
Yeah, for
just
sure.
Just for weight purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Woo. Covered a lot of ground.
I know we did. Thank you so much.
I feel like I went running.
It's a marathon. We just did a marathon.
It's a marathon,
I know.
That's awesome. So, hey, this is your She's Bold podcast.
Yeah, it is.
So, tell us what it means to be bold for you.
So I think for me to be bold, and we covered some of this, I think it means being aware enough of yourself to question the stories that you're telling. Because I can't tell you how much that awareness has changed my life. Just being aware of the fact that I tell myself and other people a certain story about how I am in the world, why I am in the world, what I do in the world. If I can just stop and question that story, is this really true? I think that's life. That's the important, that's what propels you forward. And that can be scary, but I think it's bold. I think you have to be bold to do that.
You definitely have to be bold if you're going to be walking into some scary territory, right?
Yeah, because then you challenge yourself, and that can be scary because questioning yourself is scary. Is this really true?
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah, and I think we do it all the time. I speak for myself. I mean, I'm just personal experience. My N of 1. I think the little test on myself of questioning myself, I think that can be applied across the board. I think we all tell a story, and we just need to question ourselves. And I think that can be scary. And I just think it's a bold move to stop yourself, to change your story.
Change is hard and change is bold. Thank you. That's great chatting with you, Beth.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you for this great idea. I appreciate it. I have to give you credit, for reaching out and saying, hey, what about this?
Yeah. Well, people want to hear from you and you're the interviewer. So
I know.
Flip it. We're flipping it today.
We got to do this next month.
This is great fun.
It was. Thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah. Thank you.
Again, a big shout out to Chris for taking the time to sit down with me. And we'll definitely have to link up again after each of my 4 desert runs next year. First one is Namibia in April. Now, I may take the next couple of weeks off from the podcast as I'll be traveling to visit family on the East Coast and then heading to Norway to catch the Northern Lights. So if you don't hear from me, find me on the social channels to keep up with my whereabouts. I'll definitely be back in January with some fabulous guests, I promise. For links to all the things we chatted about in this episode, go to shesboldpodcast.com/episodes, and there you will find the show notes for this and all of my other conversations. You can also find those links and show notes in whatever podcast app it is you're using to listen to this. If you'd like to support the show and let me know how much you are inspired by these conversations and how much you look forward to hearing all of these uplifting stories, go to shesboldpodcast.com/Patreon. Patreon supporters become part of our private Facebook group and get access to bonus content. It is $5 a month, but look, you spend more than that on a cup of coffee a day, right? So why not channel that? Just show me your support, become part of our community. I can't tell you how grateful I would be for that. Don't forget to check out my tours at wandertours.com. That's WANDER tours.com. We've got a few spots on the women-only tour to Morocco in February, but you're going to have to act fast on that one because we are closing that one out. We would love to get you on a room for that. Morocco, it's really a 5-star trip. It's amazing. We've also got spots on our co-ed trips to Papua New Guinea next August. I'm working on details for an India tour for early 2021 and also culinary tours to Seattle and Santa Fe. Just let me know. You can connect with me by friending me on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram at both Beth Whit Wah, and there I'm posting more personal stuff, running photos, that sort of thing, and Wander Gal, that's where I've got beautiful travel photos. Ladies, you can join the Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Be Bold group for support and encouragement for whatever ways you're trying to be bold. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. Have amazing holidays, everyone. Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, New Year, whatever it is you're celebrating, please enjoy, be safe, have a fantastic time, and until next time, be bold.